Hi, my name is Lexi. My best friends tried to kill me, and today I'm going to be telling you how I think I survived. I want to start out this video by saying my survival really boils down to one simple fact, and that is that I was in the right place at the right time where the right person came out and called 911. I was 5 minutes from the hospital. Otherwise, I would not be alive talking to you today. However, there are some things that I think drastically increased my chance of survival, and I'm going to be telling you about them today. I fought back. I yelled, I kicked, I screamed, I ripped my hair out, I made as much noise as I possibly could. And my reasoning for doing so was not even because I believed it would help me survive. Of course, I think instinctually I had hoped so, but the actual thought behind that was I need to make sure that someone knows that I was here so that they can't get rid of my body and just get rid of everything. I don't really know what fully I was thinking at that moment, but I remember looking and seeing that the water bottle bong that they had handed the substance to me in was plastic, and having the realization hit me that they're just gonna throw that away and no one's going to really even realize that I was here. But because of how much noise I made, I alerted a person, his mother, to the fact that I was in the house, and then she came upstairs and demanded that I be let go because I wasn't allowed to die on her property. When the mother actually came into the room, I was on the floor at this point. I made it all around that room. I had been on the bed, the couch. I tried to rush at the window, but when she came in, I was on the floor and I felt practically paralyzed. I could not move my body, but my fight or flight instinct really kicked in when I realized that I was going to be able to get out, that this was my only opening, and I was able to run myself down those stairs. Had I stayed scared in place, I don't think that I would be alive. Because had I not done that, I think that she would have eventually just left the room. She was acutely aware of the way her son behaved and his previous criminal history. So I don't really think that she actually had a genuine concern for my life as much as she was concerned about any sort of legal repercussion that would come from having a person literally die on her property. When I actually made it to the road, I made sure that was everyone's problem by screaming as loud as I possibly could. Those words still ring in my brain to this day in the exact tone that I said them in, which were, I'm going to fucking die. Someone please help me. Someone please get this girl away from me. She hurt me. I've been attacked and I'm going to fucking die again and again and again. That I'm going to fucking die one was definitely the most important one because I said that a lot to make sure it was really emphasized. I later discovered that the people that had all stopped and sort of tried to interact with me but had been told by my best friend that I was crazy or going through a mental health episode had actually called 911 and expressed their concern and had reported the suspicious behavior of my friend. However, they were concerned about actually stopping and intervening in the situation, though one man did, and his 911 call is the one that eventually got the ambulance to me because I was on the move, so I guess they didn't officially know where my location was just based on the descriptions. And the timeline is much shorter than I had initially thought, with me being to the hospital within a 30-minute period. And finally, what I think was most important in saving my physical body, at least, is the fact that I stayed alert, conscious, and calm for as long as I was able to, with calm being the most important. While you might think that someone who is actively losing their life is going to be anything but calm, I couldn't process those emotions in the moment. They were something that had to be dealt with afterwards, because in the moment, I needed to focus all of my energy on staying alive, and had I given into those anxious thoughts, I would have died significantly faster. So I needed to stay awake. And I did so by asking myself questions like, what is my hair color? What is my eye color? What kind of music do I like? What are my animals' names? Who is the president? Things that I knew would keep me connected to reality for as long as I possibly could, until eventually my body did give out on me. And when my body was giving out, I remembered one thing, and that is that I had two black and white horses. Their names are Polly and Lightning. And had I not held on to that fact, I don't know what would have happened next. But like I said in the beginning of the video, had that man not been on that street at that time and decided he wasn't going to listen to what my friend was telling him and was actually going to be the one who saved me, I would not be alive today.
I just have to pause and deeply respect the pure survival instinct of this girl. Think about this for a second. She is actively being poisoned and attacked by someone she called a best friend, and her brain bypasses the panic of dying just to focus on leaving a breadcrumb trail. The fact that she looked at a plastic water bottle and thought, They're going to throw this away. I need to make noise so my body is found. That is chilling. That is a level of hyper-awareness that you only unlock when you are staring the absolute worst-case scenario right in the face. And then she makes it outside and screams, "I'm going to fucking die," over and over again. She wasn't just crying for help. She was creating a public record. She was forcing the neighborhood to become witnesses. I think what really gets me is how she kept herself awake by listing off facts: her hair color, the president, her horses, Polly and Lightning. It's a beautiful and heartbreaking reminder of how our minds will anchor to the things we love when we are slipping away. I'm just so glad she is here to tell her story, and massive props to that one man who didn't buy the friend's whole "she's having a mental health episode" lie. Transition. From a best friend's unthinkable betrayal, we unfortunately have to look at a betrayal that cuts even deeper. The kind that happens inside your own home by the people supposed to protect you.
My dad got me pregnant. I'm going to preface for anybody that's new here, this is not my story. This is just a summary of a story that I watched last night on YouTube on the channel Other People's Lives. And I also want to say this. I only was able to watch this once. I watched it once. I turned it off. I went to bed. Okay. If you want the full, detailed version, please go to YouTube, go to the channel Other People's Lives, and watch it there. I was not able to try and watch it twice so I could, really soak in everything. I feel like I retained what was important and I moved on. I also want to say that if you are somebody that's going to get in my comment section and you're going to complain that I am doing my makeup and telling this story, you picked the wrong comment section. Okay, I don't care. There's no reason why you should be offended over that. I know that all of a sudden we're getting offended over stuff like that now. But I'm getting ready for work, and it would be no different than if I heard this story last night and then FaceTimed my best friends and told them about it as I was getting ready for work, because it's the only time of the day that I have. Okay, so let's get started. So our caller starts off with how all of this started, how, everything with her father kind of unfolded. So she started with her, being a young age, and it was small things that now as an adult she's noticing wasn't small at all. Like being a young child and her father playing porn on the TV out in the open. I can't remember if she said that her siblings were also in the room or in the area when he was doing that, but she definitely said that she was. And at times she would even be sitting on the couch and he is just outright playing porn on the TV. All right. So first of all, that's weird. I've noticed in a lot of cases that when it is a parent on child, which it's disgusting to say out loud, a lot of the times that's how it starts, is it will start with showing the child, the victim, pornography, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to desensitize children to sex, to sexual acts. So then when they try to, do the same things, the kid may not think that it's wrong, or it may not register in that child's brain that something is not right with what is happening to me. What's worse is her mother knew that he was doing this, knew that he was watching porn out in the open with his child watching it too. And she didn't really do anything about it. So it escalated to her dad asking her to massage his shoulders and then massage his legs. And then it obviously evolved into her massaging areas that no child should be touching on an adult, period. Then as these situations progress, which they normally do, her dad ended up calling her into the kitchen one night, and it was just those two. They were alone, and he sat her on the counter, and there was Vaseline next to her, and you can put the pieces together there of what happened in that situation. Once her dad was fully comfortable molesting her, and he was aware that she was not going to say anything, because he would basically threaten her by telling her, you can tell somebody, but if you do, then none of the bills are going to get paid. You and your siblings are going to go into foster care, and your mom's going to be homeless because she doesn't pay any bills. I pay all the bills. So, of course, he scared her into not saying anything because she specifically said, you know, she doesn't want her mom to be homeless. She doesn't want her siblings to be, you know, put in foster care. She didn't want everybody to be upset with her. So, as he got more comfortable, this became what she said, a once a week occurrence. And he started sneaking into her bedroom saying that, you know, he's going to tuck her in, put her to bed, whatever. And it would always start with him getting into her bed late at night, porn playing on his phone, and he would tell her, you know, this is what I want you to do to me. And he did that to her at least once a week. And she said that the only time that she ever got a break was when he would go back to Africa for a couple of months. She said then she would get maybe at most 6 months worth of a break from that. And then once he came home, it would start all over again. You're not going to convince me that her mother did not know. Even she made a couple of comments that she, you know, again, now as an adult, that she's sitting and remembering back of that time, that her mom did know. There's no way that she didn't. Mother's intuition is a very strong thing. And this is what I say about almost all of the cases that I watch with molestation, is if there is a mother in that home, you're not going to convince me that they don't know, that these mothers don't know that all of a sudden the man that they've been married to for however long is all of a sudden acting strange. Their child is acting strange. They're showing favoritism towards one child, so on and so forth. So you're not going to convince me that her mom didn't know. And just like last night, I might have to get up a couple times because I got so heated listening to this story and just knowing that there was another parent in the household that more than likely knew and didn't say anything because she wanted the bills to get paid. Her dad was the breadwinner. I believe that's what she said. And after years of dealing with this abuse, she ran away. She said that one day she just had had enough. She blocked her family and ran away. And the same night that she ran away was the same night that she went to a party with her boyfriend and her friends. And she got drunk and spilled everything. She told them everything that was going on. So, of course, the second that she did that was the second that the police got called. The police immediately start investigating, and in cases like this, once they start an investigation where there is molestation or anything like that involved with somebody in the household, they tell that person that they cannot be in the household until the investigation is finished. So they told her dad that he has to find somewhere else to go. He cannot be physically in that house. But where the dad found a loophole was that they said he couldn't be in the house. They didn't say that he couldn't park his car at the end of the driveway every single day and just watch and surveil. So the whole time that the caller is supposed to be feeling safe, like something is going to happen, like this is going to stop, she's having to deal with the fact that her dad is still parked right outside the house at the end of the driveway, watching everything. She also mentioned that, and this is going to piss me off even worse. She mentioned that pretty much the whole time this investigation was originally going on, like the first time that dad was being investigated, it was like her mother was punishing her. And it was almost like she was blaming her for it because she was tearing up the family. Like, that is what her mom was treating her like. That is the things that her mom was saying to her. And one thing that I can't remember from listening to this is I cannot remember if her mother ever explicitly said that she was lying. She just told her that she's ruining the family. The caller also stated that she had to watch as her mom and her siblings went outside every day, walked out to her dad's car, and basically, had a full powwow. Like, nothing was happening. They all walked out to his car and they would talk to him for like an hour or hours, you know, just like kiki, haha, like nothing was actually happening. They were updating him about how their days went. It would be no different than if they walked in and sat at the dinner table with him and were talking with him. And she had to watch that. After everything that had come out, she had to watch them do that with the perpetrator, with the person that had traumatized her for so long. And then her father did go to jail. He was arrested, right? She said that the only family members that actually told her that they believed her and they supported her bailed him out of jail. So now let's talk about her becoming pregnant with her father's baby. She obviously knew that there was something going on in her body. If that is one thing that women are good with, is just discernment and when there is something not normal going on inside of their bodies, right? So I say that because not only did she, the caller, kind of recognize that there was something weird going on in her body, but her mother also was kind of starting to assume that she was pregnant. Again, I am so glad that they keep these people confidential because I want to know. I want to know who that mom is so bad, and I am keeping the things that I want to say to myself. But her mom kind of started understanding that her daughter was pregnant, and there's a 90% chance that it is her husband that got their daughter pregnant. And the caller got a DNA test because it was two options. It's either her boyfriend or her dad, and come to find out, the baby has her dad's DNA. That is her dad's baby. And then the police got involved again, and the dad was arrested again. Throughout all this, the caller had her baby and immediately put the baby up for a closed adoption. And I think that that was 100% the right thing to do, because she does not need to relive that trauma every day, and that baby needs to grow up not being exposed to how it was made. And again, I just think that she did the right thing. Her dad, mind you, escaped jail and ran off to Africa. He went to Africa, which she said, really, she had already kind of removed him from her life mentally, no matter what, right? But she found out that he had escaped and went to Africa because his PO or his CO called her to inform her of that. And she started receiving photos from her siblings in Africa, because she has siblings in Africa as well. They were sending her photos of them with her dad. And I want to go ahead and say this because she also said this. She does not believe that her siblings in Africa knew about this. I highly doubt that her dad went to Africa with his other kids and other family and let them know, like, hey, I just escaped prison and it's because I molested your sister back in America and now I'm here. Hello. Like, I don't think that he said that. I think that her siblings were just sending her photos almost like, you know, it was just letting her know, like, hey, dad's here, you know, and they had no idea that they were re-traumatizing her over and over, and she did not tell them that because she was trying to move on. And that is one thing that I want to say, because now I'm just going to kind of like give my thoughts, really. The caller, the person, the victim, she is one of the strongest people I have ever, like, known. And I don't know her, but it's the fact that she is telling this story. She is not stuttering. She is not, like, her voice isn't even breaking. She is saying this story like, this happened to me. This was the outcome and I moved on. And what really broke my heart is that I cannot remember when this video was posted, but I know when this video was posted, she was 22 years old telling this story. And my youngest sister is 22. And I know, and I'm not trying to make this about myself, but I know that when I was raped by somebody, and then some people that I trusted, and I didn't even know them that well. I just was naive and I trusted people that I shouldn't have. That does not excuse what happened to me, but I'm just saying, I could not imagine, because it took me years to get over that PTSD. It took me years to not wake up in the middle of the night with sweats and crying and, being afraid that I was going to run into those people everywhere that I went. I could not imagine me being a victim to my own father and like trying to move on from that. She is one of the strongest people that I know, and anybody that goes through this type of scenario, because unfortunately this is not an uncommon thing to happen. They are the strongest people that I know, and I don't know them, but you know what I mean. And the caller, I truly hope that she is getting the absolute best out of life. I hope that she is, able to cope well, and that she is, moving on. I know that that's going to be so hard to move on from, and she probably never will be able to move on from that. But I really do hope that she is just living the best life and she's getting the best that life could possibly offer her. And I do hope the same for that baby, that that child never figures out how it was made. And, it's living a normal life away from all of this chaos, just like the caller. And that mother is disgusting. I really think for some reason the mother not standing up for her child is really what made me the most angry. And I don't care if you think that that's not the thing that I should be the most angry over. It is, because as a mother, you should protect your child at all costs. Even if he was threatening your life, if you were to go tell the police, my life is on the line then. I'm going to give up my life for my child. I don't even have children, but I know that when it comes to their life or mine, it will be theirs every single time. I will always choose my children over me and their safety over mine. Period. So the fact that her mother didn't do that, she belongs 6 feet under the jail. There's a lot worse things that I want to say, but I'm trying really hard not to. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope that you guys have a great day. And of course, I want to know what you think about this story in the comments. Again, if you want to watch the full story, go to Other People's Lives on YouTube and watch it there. And I love you. Bye.
I had to physically stop myself from throwing my phone while listening to this one. It is one thing to have a monster for a father. It is a completely different, almost more insidious level of evil to have a mother who watches the monster operate and chooses to protect her own financial comfort over her child's safety. The mother knew. The mother absolutely knew. To look at your traumatized child and blame them for ruining the family because the perpetrator was removed? There is a special place in hell for enablers like that. And the absolute audacity of the dad parking at the end of the driveway every day to surveil the house while under investigation. He was exerting power, letting her know he was still in control. And the family just walking out to his car to chit-chat? Shh, listen to me. If you are ever in a position where you have to choose between keeping the lights on or protecting a child from abuse, you let the house go dark. Period. I am in absolute awe of this 22-year-old woman. To endure that, to get pregnant by your own abuser, gracefully choose a closed adoption to break the cycle, and then sit down and articulate your story without your voice even shaking, that takes a titanium spine. She is a warrior, and I genuinely hope she knows that she left the trash behind and has a beautiful life ahead of her. Okay. I need a mental break. We need to step away from that heavy, devastating trauma and look at a different kind of human audacity, a much more mundane but still incredibly frustrating kind.
If you want to come in an hour before close at a restaurant, sure, yeah, I get it, that's okay. Is it a little bit of a bummer because we haven't had a single customer in 3 hours and we were about to close early? Yeah, but we're still technically open. You want to come in 30 minutes before close at a restaurant? I'm gonna look at you a little bit differently, but I'm still gonna try to serve you to the best of my ability. But when you come in 15 minutes before close in a restaurant, expecting an appetizer, an entree, dessert, and multiple rounds of drinks, and expect to stay there well past close, I have some choice words for you. So let's talk about the time a couple had me stay 2 hours past close during a winter storm. This is when I was working up in Oregon. This was a newer restaurant, and so sometimes we would be busy, sometimes we wouldn't be. Especially in the winter, we would have a lot of dead moments. And wouldn't you know it, this day there was an ice storm sweeping through town, so no one was on the road. I was there for about 6 hours that night, and I think I had 3 tables total. And now this restaurant closed at 9, and around 8 o'clock the roads were starting to get icy. So I called my manager and I was like, hey, haven't seen a single soul in here for a couple hours. Can we close early so I don't crash my car into a tree? And she said no. So by the time 8:45 rolls around, it is literally just me and one of the line cooks. That's it. That's all the people that were in the restaurant. Side work was done, kitchen was pretty much shut down. A soul had not walked inside in hours, and it looked post-apocalyptic outside. And so I'm not gonna lie, at this point at 8:45, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna lock the doors. There's no one that's going to walk in 15 minutes before close. Right? Lo and behold, a couple moseys in and they're all bundled up because it's storming outside. And you wanna know the first thing they say to me? They don't say hello, they don't say how are you. They say, this place was really hard to find. You should really fix that on Google Maps. And as they're saying this, I'm processing the storm that's raging on behind them. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get home in my little ass front wheel drive sedan after these people are finished eating? Just as a quick disclaimer, it does not matter what type of car you have in an ice storm. If you don't have studded tires or chains, if you choose to go out on roads that are frozen over, you're kind of just gambling whether or not you're gonna make it home without wrapping your car around a pole. After I finish processing, I go, hi folks, we're actually just about to close up. We close at 9, the kitchen's finishing up, and we just wanna make sure employees get home safe, you know, since the storm is going on. And they go, really? Because the owners told us that we could come in. I really love that one because when anyone says, well, I know the owner, or the owner said this, what that tells me is you met the owner during a social gathering one time for 5 minutes and they mentioned that they own this location, and so now they think that you're their best friend. But like I said, this was a new restaurant, this was a family-owned restaurant, and I really didn't want to get a bad review in the early days. So I'm like, fine, whatever, but just so you know, all drink and food orders need to be in by 9 p.m. I seat them, I give them menus, and then I have to walk back to the kitchen. You don't know pain until you've walked into back of house after they're almost completely done closing just to say, hey, another table actually walked in. I want to say within about 3 minutes of them sitting down, I walk back to their table to get their order because we were closing. And when I walk over, I'm like, hey folks, y'all ready to get some wine going, get some appetizers going? What do we want? We're still deciding. Okay. Yep, no worries. I'll swing back by in a few, but just as a reminder, I need to have all food and drink orders in before 9 p.m. And so I walk away for about 3 more minutes. At this point, I'm starting to get alerts on my phone that the power's going out around the city. So I'm thinking, oh, sick, no street lights on the drive home now too. Awesome. Walk back over and they finally order wine. That's it, that's all they order. Are we ready to get some food going? No, we wanna have our wine first and see what we're feeling like after. And I'm gonna save you guys the details because this interaction repeated about 4 more different times. They ended up putting in their food at 8:58. At this point, I'm wondering if the Armageddon is happening because I'm getting texts like, hey girl, did you make it home safe? It's scary out there, be safe out there. What am I gonna walk out to? And so the cook makes their food pretty quickly. They get their food around 9:10, I wanna say. And then he's like, hey, look, I have literally nothing left to do. I cleaned up after them already. Are you cool if I head out? And I was like, yeah, dude, there's no reason for you to be here. So they finish their food around 9:35. And at this point, the entire kitchen is dark. And this is an open kitchen. So all of the tables in the restaurant can see that the kitchen is pitch black. And at this point, I don't even give them a choice. I walk over to them with the check and I'm like, here's this for you. I'll swing back by in a few. And they're like, but we wanted dessert. And I look down at my watch and I go, hey, you remember like 45 minutes ago when I told you that you needed to have all of your food in by 9 p.m.? Remember when I told you that multiple times? Was I the only one present in that conversation? My bad. And so luckily, after I drop the check, they put a card on it. I go run it and I'm like, all right, y'all have a great night. Drive safe. It's crazy out there. And you know, I'm giving them some time. At this point, I'm just rinsing a few glasses. I'm dusting a few extra things. I'm trying to not make it awkward. but then they just stay sitting. Mind you, at this point, they had 2 glasses of wine each. So they had ordered their first round, and around the entree time, they ordered a second round. And they were still sipping on this second round. And I'm like lurking in the corner of this restaurant, peeking around the corner, like, why are they still here? Watching the minutes pass by. 10 p.m. and they're still cozy sitting over there having a nice little chat. And at this point, I start to get passive aggressive. Yeah, I'll say it, I'll own up to it. So I turn off the music so it's dead silent in this restaurant. And then I had already vacuumed, but I decided to pull out the vacuum again and start vacuuming all of the sections surrounding them. They completely unfazed. Okay, cool. So now it's double vacuumed and they're still unfazed. So I'm like, what else can I do? It is awkwardly silent and I just ran a vacuum by them. I know, I'm gonna turn off all the lights. So I turned off every single light in the front of house except for the light that led from their table to the front door. Apparently they loved the little spotlight moment because they only seemed to get cozier. And I want to emphasize that I had gone up to them twice before I had even thought of the vacuum idea. I had gone up twice and given them space between each time I went up to say, hey guys, so sorry, the restaurant is closed now. You're gonna have to head out within the next few minutes. And they just straight up ignored me. Now, me now would not have been this forgiving, but this was my first restaurant job. So it's 10:45 at this point, and I'm in this restaurant alone with this couple having the perfect romantic getaway date, apparently. And I'm just thinking about how I'm probably gonna have to trek through the ice if I can't drive my vehicle. So what do? I go up to the host stand and I decide I'm gonna play some heartstrings right now. So I pull out my phone and I call my roommate. And she understood the assignment. I call her and I go, hey, I'm so sorry. I know I'll be home soon. I'm just really worried. I think I'm gonna have to stay here extra late and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get my car home. And they can't hear her on the other line, but she's playing into the bit. She deserves an award for that. She was like, oh my God, it's so dangerous. Everyone's crashing right by our street. She's talking loudly so you can vaguely hear it away from my ear, but props to her. And I don't know how I did this, but I somehow mustered up the tears. I think it was the pure frustration of this situation that I was able to really hone in on. So we're going back and forth on the phone. At some point, I muster up tears. I think just from the pure frustration of the situation. And I look out of the side of my eye and I notice that they're starting to like move a little bit more uncomfortably and they're starting to have a lot more gaps in their conversation. And I finally see them grabbing their coats and putting their bags on. I go back to the table to bus it. I look down at the check, see they didn't tip me, which whatever. And then I look at the absolute mess that they have made on the table. Wine spilled everywhere, appetizers smeared on the table. We had these really pretty like velvet cushioned seats and it looked like they had wiped their hands with grease on them. So yeah, if you're that type of person, screw you.
Honestly, the pivot from actual demons to just incredibly annoying people is giving me whiplash, but I am here for it. Anyone who has ever worked in the service industry just felt their blood pressure spike listening to this. It is a massive ice storm, the roads are literal death traps, and this couple waltzes in 15 minutes before closing and says, "This place was hard to find. Fix your Google Maps." I would have lost my job on the spot. And the classic, the owner said we could come in. Yeah, okay, Brenda. The owner also wants his staff to not wrap their cars around a telephone pole tonight. But sure, take your time deciding on your wine. The sheer level of passive aggression from this server is my favorite thing ever. Turning off the music, double vacuuming their specific section, turning off all the lights except a single spotlight leading to the door. And they still just sat there getting cozier. But the fake phone call to the roommate? Give that roommate an Oscar. Fake crying by the host stand to guilt trip them into leaving is a masterclass in psychological warfare. I love everything about how she handled this. Shoo, transition. Speaking of workplaces and the strange people we encounter. Jaw. What if you hired someone who was the absolute perfect employee, but turned out to be a complete phantom?
Message from someone named Michelle who said she's been holding on to this story for almost 30 years and she still has no explanation for it, but she said it's 100% true, it's very spooky, and there's actually other people that will vouch for her that this actually happened. She said almost 30 years ago when she was 25 years old, she was hired to run this bar and restaurant, and she was basically hired to bring this bar back to life because it was not very busy. struggling to get customers, and she was working very, very hard to revive it. And this was in Kentucky. It was called T-Bones. I don't know if it's still there, and I don't know what part of Kentucky it's actually in or was in. But anyway, she said that there was basically split into two parts. One side was a higher end steakhouse that was open during the day for lunch, and then they were open for dinner service as well. And then the other side was a bar section that opened at 4 p.m. Michelle obviously was working a lot of long days as the general manager of this restaurant. And she said one day, about 2 hours before open, she was sitting in the office. She had the door partially open, and she was placing a wine order when all of a sudden there was a head that popped into her partially opened office door. I didn't recognize this person. It was a man. She said he looked like old paintings of Jesus. I don't know how else to describe it. But she said he also had this very calming presence about him. But he pops his head in and he says, "I'm here about the assistant job. Your employees told me that I could find you back here." Before, Michelle had actually decided that she was going to hire basically an assistant position, somebody to run errands, to go to the local farmers markets for local produce and to the local butcher shops for local meat. But she said she hadn't actually posted that job anywhere yet. But she figured that one of the other employees must have known this man and told him about the job. She's like, perfect, this must be a referral. Now I don't even need to find somebody. Come on in right now. I will interview you on the spot. And she starts telling him about the job, and he's like, this all sounds great, except for I don't have a car. And she goes, that's really not a big deal because it's for the company. You can use my car. Really weren't any other issues. She said he seemed perfect for the job. He was very well spoken. She put him at about 45 years old. Even though he didn't tell her who referred him to the job and said that he didn't have any experience doing anything like this before, she was like, it's just basically a personal assistant. Like, how hard could it be? But she tells him, like, basically, let's try it out. You can work for a couple days and see if you like it. And if it goes well, then we'll fill out your paperwork. Because he also said that he wanted to be paid in cash. And also, before you come for her, I've worked at dive bars before, especially in my early 20s, and a lot of these places did pay under the table back then. I got like $15 a shift, so it's not that unlikely, especially years ago. She said life got busy. She never actually ended up filling out the paperwork. She was paying him cash anyway, and it just was what it was. She said that he was actually one of the best employees that she had. He was always on time at work, and he always walked to work, but on colder days or when it was raining out, she would actually offer to pick him up sometimes because he was on her route. She had been to his house. She met his sister who he lived with. So they lived in a very nice house. Everything's all fine and great. But about 6 months after this man started working there, he doesn't show up for work one day. She's like, that's really unlike him. Calls the house, because keep in mind, this is 30 years ago. People didn't have cell phones back then. And it just goes to the answering machine. Next day, he doesn't show up for work again. She tries calling the house again. Again, no answer. Finally, after a few days, his sister calls her back from the house phone. And she goes, I'm so sorry, I was out of town. Like, what's going on? And she goes, we haven't seen your brother in a few days. He hasn't showed up for work. It's just very unlike him. We're worried. And she goes, oh, well, I saw him this morning out back. Let me talk to him. I'll figure out why he hasn't been going to work, and I'll have him call you. He doesn't end up calling her that day. But that night she goes to bed. She's laying in bed. She's about to fall asleep. And she said she was laying on her side of the bed. And from where she laid, she could see down the long hallway past her daughter's room where she kept a nightlight. And right before she falls asleep, she has this sensation of being watched. So she pops open her eyes and she sees Kevin on his hands and knees at the end of the long hallway. And she said his normally well-kept hair was like brushed down, touching the floor. And his head was like crooked in this unnatural way, the way that you would expect something out of a zombie movie. So she sits up, she screams his name, and then her husband wakes up. She looks at her husband to be like, this man's in our house. And then she looks back and he's gone. Her husband's obviously like, you had a really bad dream. That wasn't real. And she was like, I was terrified because I felt like it was 100% real. I could not sleep that night at all. So I just stayed up. The next morning she waited. She called his sister, and his sister answers, and she's crying. And she tells her that they found Kevin the night before. He had passed by his own hand in the garage. Sister tells her that she had been getting ready to call her when the phone rang, and it's just been a really rough morning. And she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He was a great employee. I will do whatever I can to help you. And his sister's like, okay, thank you. And so in trying to help his sister with the arrangements, they needed his social security number because his sister didn't have it. I was like, oh, no worries. We have his employment record on file. I'll just pull it from there. Well, she looks and she realizes they never filled out the paperwork. And then she asks the sister, like, you didn't find his ID in his wallet or anything? Like, you can't pull it? And she goes, no, I opened his wallet after he passed and all I found was cash. I was like, well, can you go to the DMV or can you go to public records? And she's like, I've done all of that and there's no record of his existence. Michelle's like, look, I want to help, but this all seems really weird. Are your parents still around? And she's like, no, our parents passed. I've actually only known about him for about a year or so. I didn't even know I had a brother. And then Michelle said that she found out that the way that the sister found out about him was very similar to the way that she met him. He just apparently popped up in the sister's life and was like, I'm your long lost brother. And they loved each other, siblings, pretty much immediately because he had all this evidence that he was in fact her brother. That was weird. The sister was grieving. They had him cremated and they were going to have, his arrangements. So then she's telling all of her employees, unfortunately, Kevin has passed. And she's asking the employees, like, actually, who's the one that referred him to me? And none of the employees knew him previously. All said that they really enjoyed working with him and that he had a calming presence on them, but none of them had known him, and she still doesn't understand how he even knew about the assistant job because, like I said, it wasn't posted. So she said all these years later, she is still wondering who he was. The name that was given to her was Kevin Schmutz. She said it still bothers her that she knew someone without ever knowing who they truly were.
Shh. Okay, wait. Let's really process this. You hire a guy named Kevin Schmutz, who looks like an old painting of Jesus, who shows up out of nowhere, works perfectly for 6 months, gets paid in cash, and then suddenly, vanishes. And not just vanishes from work, but vanishes from existence. The moment she described waking up and seeing him on his hands and knees at the end of the long hallway with his hair touching the floor and his neck bent like a zombie. I have chills everywhere. Was it sleep paralysis, or was he projecting himself to her right as he passed? But then the sister says there's no social security number, no public record. He just appeared a year ago and claimed to be her brother with evidence. Who was this man? Was he an angel, a demon, a glitch in the matrix, a witness protection program situation gone wrong? It leaves you with this deeply unsettling feeling that we walk past people every single day who might not actually be who they say they are, or worse, might not be anyone at all. When you sit back and look at all the stories we just went through today, it feels like a heavy, chaotic ride. But there's a very specific, undeniable thread that ties every single one of these experiences together. It is the terrifying reality of the illusions we live with and the masks that the people around us wear. Let's really think about it. Society is entirely built on a social contract. It's an unspoken agreement we all sign the moment we wake up. We assume that the customer walking into a restaurant will have basic human empathy. We assume that the man we hire to run errands actually exists in the government system. We assume implicitly that the person we call our best friend won't slip something into our drink. And above all else, we assume that the parents who brought us into this world will stand as a shield between us and the monsters of the world. But what happens when that contract is broken? What happens when the mask slips? Remember when the server fake cried on the phone to her roommate? She was putting on a mask of vulnerability just to manipulate a couple who would mask their own utter selfishness as a romantic evening out. It's infuriating, but it's a micro-scale violation. It's an annoyance. But then we scale it up. Remember when we saw the story of Kevin, the ghost employee? That wasn't just a mask. That was an entirely fabricated existence. He lived, he worked, he smiled, he had a calming presence, yet fundamentally, he was a phantom. It makes you wonder how well you actually know the person sitting in the cubicle next to you. But the most devastating layer of this is when the mask is worn by the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. That phrase from the second story, "I'm going to fucking die," really stuck with me. She wasn't just screaming for help, she was screaming because the architecture of her reality was collapsing. The person she trusted was actively trying to erase her. And then we reached the darkest corner of human nature with the mother in the fourth story. A mother who chose ignorance, who chose the comfort of paid bills over the safety of her own daughter. Ugh. That isn't just a mask slipping. That is the revelation that the mother never had a maternal heart to begin with. The father was a monster, yes, but the mother was the architect of the victim's ongoing psychological torture. Yet, if there is a counter-argument to all this darkness, if there is a reason we don't just lose completely hope in humanity after hearing these stories, it lies in the sheer unyielding resilience of the victims. Look at the duality here. We live in a world where a father can do the unthinkable, but we also live in a world where a 22-year-old girl can take that trauma break, the generational curse, through a selfless adoption, stand tall, and tell her story to help others. We live in a world where a best friend can try to take your life, but your brain is so beautifully wired for survival that it reminds you of your horses Polly and Lightning just to keep your heart beating until the ambulance arrives. The core truth here is that we have absolutely no control over the villains in our stories. We can't control the entitled strangers in the dining room. We can't control the phantoms who wander into our lives. And tragically, we can't even choose the family we are born into. But we do control our survival. We control our voices. These survivors didn't just endure. They documented their truth. They made noise. They refused to let the darkness quietly sweep them away. So, I have to ask you guys, After hearing all of this, has the situation ever made you realize that you didn't actually know the person sitting right in front of you? Have you ever seen the mask slip? Let me know down in the comments because I really want to read your experiences. Stay safe out there, trust your intuition, and I'll see you in the next one.